The government should revoke the powers of this woman, and these charges should be withdrawn. Let Brigadier Lynn McDade know this is not on. Go to my page on the 2GB website, click onto the ADF petition link, follow the prompts, fill in your details and press sign. So join the campaign to stop the prosecution of our troops doing what we sent them to do.
Hello, I'm Paul Barry. Welcome to Media Watch. And no prizes for guessing, that was veteran shock jock Alan Jones, mobilising his listeners to support 3 Australian soldiers charged in relation to the killing of 5 civilians in a raid in Afghanistan. One of these soldiers is accused of manslaughter, which carries a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison. And Alan Jones has been busting a gut to get all charges dropped, with a 3-week campaign vilifying Australia's Director of Military Prosecutions, Brigadier Lynn McDade, who brought them.
What is quite a threatening letter. The Chief of the Army Command warns his troops that they shouldn't sign a petition that such conduct, quote, might influence the outcome of the charges, unquote. Precisely. That is what we're seeking to do. To influence the public to understand that this woman, a brigadier without a brigade, a woman who's never seen the signs, let alone heard the sounds of battle, has too much power, and unless the public seek to influence the outcome of all of this, you can bet your life the gutless Army Command won't.
Now, there are laws to stop Jones from doing this, and we'll come to them in a moment, because tonight we're going to devote the entire programme to this issue. But first, to what happened. In February 2009, Australian Special Forces raided a compound near the village of Surk Murghab in Afghanistan's Oruzgan province. In the heat of the fighting, 1 Taliban insurgent was killed, but so too were 4 children and a teenager. A year later, SBS's Dateline programme interviewed relatives of some of the victims. The soldiers' version of what happened was given to the ABC some 4 weeks ago, after charges were laid, by a senior commando officer whose face was blacked out. His second-hand account, which ran on AM, the 7 o'clock news and News 24, claimed the Australian soldiers had little choice but to do as they did.
They were in a room where the walls were exploding around them as the mud and stuff came off the walls as this bloke fired through the walls. And in an effort to protect the people in their section who were closest to this bloke, they popped a hand grenade into a room. The response was that he changed magazines and kept firing. My understanding is that he may have used up sort of the best part of 3 magazines of ammunition. That's 90 rounds of AK-47. That's 7.62 bullets that go through a mud wall without even stopping. And they then realised that he was going to keep going, he was intent on it, so they put a second hand grenade in, and he stopped.
Now that may well be what happened, but it may not. Dateline's report showed pictures of the room where the killings supposedly occurred, and the walls did not have 90 bullet holes. The senior commando officer's account is also in conflict with what the victims' families told Dateline. As Executive Director of the Australian Defence Association, Neil James, observed,
a lot of the claimed facts about the incident are in fact assumptions. Many of them may need to be tested in court.
Actually, all the facts need to be tested in court. That's the point of having a trial, rather than trial by media. Normally, once a person is charged, there are strict rules to prohibit the media from trying the case. Journalists breaking those rules can end up in jail for contempt of court, as broadcaster Darren Hinch famously did. The same principle applies to military tribunals, which are essentially made up of a jury of soldiers. According to Sydney University's Professor Ben Saul, trying such a case through the media
may prejudice and contaminate the independence of mind with which military personnel are expected to approach decision-making at trial, and potentially produce an unjust result in which the truth is avoided due to improper considerations.
This principle of not prejudging a trial is backed by Section 89 of the Defence Act, which states that no person shall
do any act or thing that would, if a service tribunal were a court of record, constitute a contempt of that court.
So in broad terms, the rules are the same, whether it's a military or a criminal court. and the penalty for breaking them is potentially severe.
$1,000 or imprisonment for 6 months.
So why isn't Alan Jones in the slammer? Because there's no doubt he's trying to stop the trial or get the soldiers acquitted. Well, the devil is in the detail. The tribunal hearing these charges, comprising a panel of up to 5 army officers, has not yet been constituted. And until it is, there is no court for Alan to be in contempt of. This loophole in the law means Jones can legally get away with saying anything he likes, however inflammatory it is. But even though Jones is within the law, his vicious personal attacks on Brigadier McDade are still quite disgraceful.
Ken emailed me to say, I spent 35 years in the Army in the frontline infantry and Vietnam training soldiers to do the job of combat. This is so much rubbish. Brigadier Lynn McDade has never been in combat or close to combat trying to big note herself. She's got no idea. In my day, the soldiers came first, especially your infantry combat soldiers, and nobody messed with them. And definitely not a female looking to justify her existence.
A female, indeed. You can almost see his lip curl as he says the word. More often, and there are many examples, Alan Jones calls the Director of Military Prosecutions this woman.
Should not the Parliament, given the national controversy, anger about the obscenity of charging these people, should not the Parliament meet to determine whether this farce goes on and pull this woman into line, get rid of her, or change the whole system of military justice? I mean, shouldn't that be a priority now?
Jones has enlisted a variety of sympathisers to answer such questions and add punch to his campaign, including News Limited columnist Piers Ackerman, whose views on McDade are equally contemptuous.
This woman was the Deputy Coroner of the Northern Territory, not a position that ranks extremely high in Australian legal circles. And for her now to be deciding which cases to prosecute in our military is an absolute joke. Alan, she's a brigadier. What brigade has she ever commanded? Where is it located? What are her decorations? Has she got the Canberra Club medal? Has she got the Public Service Cross or the Order of the 9 to 5?
For the record, Lynn McDade has 23 years' experience of military justice, gained in the Army or Army Reserve since 1983. And she holds the rank of brigadier by virtue of her office. She's also worked as a barrister, prosecutor and magistrate. Furthermore, she can't bring charges on a whim. She must be satisfied there is
a reasonable prospect of conviction by a service tribunal properly instructed as to the law.
So, who appointed this woman, as Jones insists on calling her? According to Alan,
this woman was given untrammelled power, greater power than the military command, by the Rudd government as the quote-unquote new form of military justice.
Well, no, actually, 100% wrong. It was John Howard's government who appointed McDade, and John Howard's government that created the Office of Independent Military Prosecutor. But this is a concept Jones just doesn't get.
Why should they be charged? I mean, why does this woman have this unchallengeable power to charge them? Shouldn't the Parliament say, in the light of the evidence the Parliament has, these people should not be charged?
Jones put that question to opposition leader Tony Abbott. But, unlike Alan Jones, he knows where to draw the line.
Well, Alan, as I understand it, she is the military equivalent of the Director of Public Prosecutions. Now,
she's got more power than the military command.
Now, if in an ordinary criminal matter, the DPP made a decision to prosecute, it may or may not be a good decision, but it would not normally be something that could be overridden by the Attorney General.
Then she's too strong and the Parliament's too weak, if that's the case.
Does Alan Jones really want Parliament or him to decide who's prosecuted? Has he never heard of the separation of powers? Or is it that it suits his case? As the Defence Chief Angus Houston told Senate estimates last week, there is a principle at stake.
I think there's a principle here that, we have to consider. Fundamentally, there was a need for a process of prosecution that would be run by an independent person.
Australia needs an independent prosecutor to show the world we fight wars fairly, as we often exhort other countries to do. And, as the Chief of Army Command, Lieutenant General Ken Gillespie says, because
the Army is simply not above the law.
In a letter to his soldiers 2 weeks ago, Ken Gillespie tried to calm some of the undoubted anger in his ranks.
Many will have views about whether or not charges should have been brought. Many may hope that those who have been charged will be cleared.
But the Army Chief was so concerned about Jones's campaign that he also issued this warning to the troops.
It is completely inappropriate and, more importantly, unlawful to engage in any conduct that might influence the outcome of the charges. This includes public comment in any capacity about the merits of the charges, or by vilifying the prosecutor, or by otherwise influencing, directly or indirectly, the course of the prosecution, including by joining in petitions.
Courtesy of the loophole in the law, Jones is doing all of those things. And despite those threats from Army Command, rank-and-file soldiers and officers are clearly feeding him the ammunition, with the result that the campaign to kill the prosecution continues unabated.
Now, I have heard from one of the men who was there on that night. He has said to me, and I quote, "The story that Defence is peddling is a despicable lie, a mix of half-truth and fiction, created to serve McDade's personal agenda." He said, quote, "These lifetime friends, whom I've served with for 13 years, did what had to be done that night." He went on, "Unfortunately, that's what happens in war. Their actions certainly saved Australian lives that night. The volume of fire from the insurgent was intense."
It's compelling stuff, which may well be true, but it may also be false. We've received an extremely detailed 8-page letter defending the soldiers' actions, condemning the prosecutions and attacking the investigators. But we will not be publishing it. Why not? Because it is for the court, not Alan Jones and his listeners, or us, to decide what happened on that night and who is telling the truth. After the trial, which is expected to start early next year, there will be plenty of time for debate. But until then, the court should be left to do its job, without bullying, vilification and ridicule, so it can get to the truth and be seen to do so. That's why we have an independent justice system. And you can read more about this on our website. But for now, that's all from us. We'll be back with another Media Watch at the same time next week. Good night.